So the Nothing phone has grabbed quite a lot of attention lately, mostly thanks to the hyperactive batshit bonkers backend, which flashes more than a dodgy vicar in a Carry On film. But this blower is much more than just a gimmicky arse, offering impressive features such as wireless charging and flexible camera tech for a tasty mid-range asking price. The Nothing phone will cost you 400 to 500 quid, depending on how much storage and memory you want stuffed in there. And at that price point, it is competing against loads of great 2022 mobiles such as Samsung's Galaxy A53, the OnePlus Nord 2T, and crucially, the fresh new Google Pixel 6a. So I stuck my SIM card into the Nothing phone. I've been testing out that camera tech, the gaming performance, the battery life, all the stuff that matters more than the flashy disco lights. So here's everything you need to know about the Nothing phone, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, to actually get to your Nothing phone, you will unfortunately have to shred the box to bits. It's kind of craftily designed, I guess, so then you can't easily sell it on again. And inside of that box, you will of course find your Nothing phone. And there's also one other pull-out tray. This contains your Type-C to Type-C USB cable. And also quite a funky, porky pin device as well. Good to see Nothing carrying on the good work that OnePlus originally started. And that sadly is it. No condom case, no power adapter either. Of course, that's becoming increasingly common now, and good for the environment, hip hip huzzah. And anyway, it's all about this wee blighter here, the Nothing phone, open brackets, 1 close brackets. So the Nothing phone is a 6.55 incher, weighing in at 193 grams, so certainly got quite the heft to it. And the word bulky immediately springs to mind as well, because as you can see there, it's got reasonably sized bezels surrounding that already pretty big screen, and then got a proper bit of chunk as well, certainly very reminiscent of those iPhones, of course. And that's not just because it's big and thick, but also you've got this recycled aluminium frame punctuated by antenna bands. In fact, the only clue that it's not an iPhone is the fact you don't have that ridiculous mustache notch chucked away up at the top of the display. Gotta say, first impressions are kind of mixed, because I do prefer more compact smartphones myself, as I'm always banging on about. Of course, you don't get that here with the Nothing phone. It is not easy to use one-handed, especially as there's no dedicated one-handed mode, and you certainly feel it when it's stuck away in your shorts. However, that said, it does feel like quite a premium smartphone despite the bulk and everything as well. You've got that aluminium frame, you've got glass front and back as well, which is rather nice because a lot of other mid-range mobiles do just go for a plastic finish instead. And that metal frame and the glass surfaces as well all seem pretty hardy. No signs of wear and tear so far, though admittedly it only has been a few days, but you do have Gorilla Glass 5 front and back, so that should hopefully help to keep it looking smart, nice and scratch free. And the Nothing phone is IP53 splash resistant as well, so absolutely fine if you're caught in a downpour, gets a bit moist, whatever, just make sure you dry it off nice and quick. Unfortunately not fully water resistant, unlike the Samsung Galaxy A53 and the Pixel 6a, which can be properly full on dunked in water and survive just fine. And you've got two colour choices with the Nothing phone. You can either grab it in this white edition, otherwise you can also snaffle it in black. And I was a bit worried that those glyph lights wouldn't show up quite as well here on the white model compared with the black, but you know what, they are super bright, so you've got absolutely no worries seeing those, even when it's a super sunny day. I gotta say, it's probably just my filthy mind, but that glyph pattern still looks to me like Totoro swinging around a massive furry dong. I swear, once you see it, you just can't ever unsee it. Who knows, maybe with the Nothing phone open brackets 2 close brackets, we'll get some sort of official Studio Ghibli tie-in. And also, is it Ghibli or is it Ghibli? Because I've heard it pronounced both ways and it drives me friggin' nuts. So, you know, let us know in the comments down below. Are you Team Ghibli or Team Ghibli? So now let's shift onto the software. And the Nothing phone is running a mostly stock version of Android here, but with the Nothing launcher slapped on top. And it is a very light skin compared with some. Don't expect a huge number of bonus features to be added, but it does add the Nothing styling such as the dot matrix font, which crops up in all of the various settings menus, etc. And indeed, even in the name when you actually turn the phone on. So it's your standard Android layout. You've got likes of the Google feed over on this side. You've got the apps tray when you pull up. The notifications nicely laid out. You've got toggles to all of your major stuff right here. Your internet stuff is all clustered together in one big bubble right here, which again you can swipe through for your Wi-Fi, your mobile hotspotting and your mobile data. And that is fully customizable as ever. I'm kind of surprised that Glyphs isn't in there by default, to be honest. Yeah, if you long press on that there desktop, you've got your basic Android customization, so changing up the wallpaper, changing up the colors based on the wallpaper. And this is also where you can install a different icon pack if you don't like the Nothing one. To be honest, doesn't really change up much at all. Anyway, you've got a slightly stylized camera icon and that's pretty much it. Because one of the benefits of the Nothing phone is no crapware, which is absolutely fantastic. It's just your standard Google Android stuff, and then of course whatever you choose to install. And you have to commend Nothing phone on their software support as well. You've got 3 years of Android OS updates, so Android 13, 14 and 15 should all be coming to the Nothing phone, and 4 years of security updates as well on a bi-monthly basis. Almost as good as Samsung's pledge with the Galaxy A53, and it certainly beats most rivals at this price point. Of course, the Nothing launcher does still require some refinement, so for instance, the actual Nothing widgets are still pretty cack. I guess they do kind of suit the minimalist theme, but they just look a bit ugly, really. The at-a-glance style one is alright, but you do have to have a really plain wallpaper to actually make it stand out, otherwise it just kind of gets lost in the noise. But thankfully, it hasn't been a particularly buggy experience so far, which is even more impressive when you consider its first generation hardware and software. The notifications did have a bit of a funny turn with that internet-based shenanigans. Managed to solve that with a reboot of the phone, and another time the Nothing phone had a total paddy and refused to do anything at all until once again I actually rebooted the bugger, and then it was absolutely fine and dandy again. If we bounce our way into the settings menu, you'll find much the same setup as what you've got with the stock Android smartphone, just with a few extra bits here and there. And I have messed around with some stuff as well. So for instance, go into privacy, and there's not a quick and easy way of disabling the mic and the camera for all apps anymore, unfortunately. No fast toggle, you can only see which apps are actually using the microphone and then manage their permissions. And same goes for the camera. And yeah, that quick toggle has been removed from the actual notifications as well. Because one of the major additions that the Nothing launcher adds is this glyph interface section. This controls those disco lights around the back end, which are basically just stylish glorified notification lights. Those lights also light up when you're, for instance, charging the phone, all kinds of shenanigans. And yes, the glyph setup works as a notifications light as well. You've got 10 different flashing light disco patterns you can choose from, and you can allocate each of the 10 patterns to one of your favorite contacts as well, up to 10 in total, of course, if you wanted to flash that particular pattern whenever they call. Of course, for me, this feature is completely defunct because who even gets calls anymore? If I do get called by someone, inevitably it's via a messaging app such as WhatsApp or something, so that feature isn't then going to work. You can't allocate a different flash and light pattern to contacts within a messaging app. All you can do is set a specific light pattern for each individual app, and even then that is an absolute ball ache to do. Got to go to app info, then notifications, and then scroll down, head to, in this case, message notifications. Then from there go into sound, and then finally you can select a Nothing ringtone for that specific app. And inside the gestures settings, there is a flip to glyph option, which just allows you basically to flip the phone over, leave it face down, and then it should then flash a lot, and basically then it's on silent mode with just the glyph notifications rather than standard notifications, but doesn't seem to want to be doing that for some reason. It was working up until this very point, so not really sure what's going on there. And it is a nice idea, but unfortunately limited in its actual functionality, and also you can't create your own glyph light patterns, which seems like a bit of a missed opportunity. And basically, if I do find myself in a meeting or something, but I still want to be alerted to notifications when they come in, I'll just have the phone on my desk with the screen up so I can actually see exactly who's getting in touch with me and how and why and all of that stuff, rather than having just lights flashing in my face, which can be slightly distracting. Especially as I then have to try and figure out what the Morse code pattern of lights going off actually means in terms of who's trying to get in touch or via what app. As it stands right now, despite being sold as the phone's big USP, I can't see the glyph lighting being useful for most people at all, unless you're absolutely off your mind on disco biscuits and you want to set up an impromptu rave in your front room. And with the Nothing launch, you've also got an NFT gallery and fast access to some Tesla related features if you've got far too much money. On the security side, it is a simple in-display optical sensor like most other rivals at this sort of price point, and I found so far, touch wood, it's been absolutely fine. Occasionally takes a couple of pokes to work, but more often than not it gets you first time and is pretty quick and responsive, as you can see there. Now you do also have face recognition on here as well. Just tap the power button, and more often than not it just does not seem to like me, to be honest. I'm going to try adding my face again just to see if it helps. Not really sure. Incorrect angle. It is very pernickety, has to be said. Yes, it is a face. Promise no face. Seriously? Come on, my face ain't that bad, man. Maybe if I just don't talk at the same time. Nope. And then for your storage, you've got a choice of 128 or 256 gigs of space. As you can see, I've got the 256 gig model, so plenty of space for your media and apps and such forth, just as well because there's bugger all micro SD support. Now I've got to say, I really like the Nothing Phone's 6.55-inch OLED display. It is a bit of a cracker, like most of the rivals at this sort of price point as well. It's a Full HD plus resolution, so visuals nice and sharp, despite the fact it is quite a spacious display. You got those wide viewing angles, you got the super sharp contrast along with full HDR10 plus streaming support. Pleasingly poppy colours as well, that can be tweaked in the display settings if you like. And the refresh rate scales from 60 to 120 Hz, although that is fully automatic. There's no way of manually bumping it up to 120 Hz full time if that's your bag, but I'd rather have an automatic setting anyway. And when you max out the brightness, no worries seeing this thing, even on a very sunny day, even if you're rocking the shades, that visibility is perfect. My only real complaint is that the auto brightness can be a little bit aggressive at times at dimming things down, so I've had to manually tweak it just to bump it back up again. But apart from that, great stuff. And yes, unlike the iPhone, just a dinky little selfie orifice tucked away in a corner as well. Barely intrudes on the action at all when you go full screen. And for your audio shenanigans, the Nothing Phone does rock a stereo speaker setup, but is it any good?
Expert Weekly, and this week it's an absolute corker if I do say so myself. And yeah, I am slightly biased, and yeah, I have had a skinful, but I'm fine, mate. I'm absolutely alright, no worries. I'm fine, just give me the keys, I'm fine.
So on that top volume, it's got a reasonable kick to it, not quite perfectly balanced, but not too tinny either. It'll do the job in a pinch. Sadly, like many of its peers, there is sod all headphone jack action here on the Nothing Phone, so it is Bluetooth connectivity all the way, but I didn't have any issues streaming wirelessly to speakers or headphones or anything else that I've tried out these last few days. Now, powering the Nothing Phone 1 is Qualcomm Snapdragon 778G Plus platform. This offers a slight boost to the CPU performance versus the standard 778G, but it is the same GPU, and this is backed here by your choice of 8 or 12 gigs of DDR5 RAM. This right here is the 8 gig model, perfectly respectable benchmarking scores there, and I've had absolutely no issues with the general everyday performance. Apps just load up straight away. They don't tend to close down too fast in the background either, so you're not waiting ages for them to kick back into action. And if you're into your gaming, well, I found that certainly there was no stress whatsoever here on the Nothing Phone when I was blasting through game after game of Call of Duty Mobile. The screen responsive is good enough to keep things as competitive as it possibly could when I'm in control. Those dirty dang school kids didn't get the better of me this day, boy howdy. Wanker! And swapping to a more intensive title like Genshin Impact, again the Nothing Phone held its own pretty damn well. I didn't notice any proper throttling, even though the phone did start to get quite toasty after about half an hour or so. The performance stayed pretty smooth. And even when I pushed those graphic settings to the higher levels, including bumping the frame rate up to 60 frames per second, the phone still managed to keep up. So if you are a bit of a gaming fan, you want a reliable new smartphone that can blast through anything out there, not just the latest Candy Crush or dual blasty bollocks, whatever, then the Nothing Phone will certainly be up to the task. And just like those Pixel phones, the Nothing Phone comes with its very own dedicated game mode, tucked away neatly and snugly in the system settings where most people wouldn't even know it exists. It's pretty basic stuff, but it does offer a couple of crucial features like Do Not Disturb, and that's pretty much it, but it is better than nothing. And courtesy of that Qualcomm chipset, you got full 5G support here on the Nothing Phone, and I've had bugger all issues with the connectivity, nice and nippy, something was out and about in London town, as you might expect. As for the battery tech, well, it's a 4,500 mAh capacity cell crammed into that rather chunky chassis. Shame it wasn't a bit bigger because the battery life isn't fantastic here on the Nothing Phone. I tend to get between 5 and 5.5 hours of screen on time from a full charge before this phone is fully wiped out, and it's not quite as good as some rivals, has to be said. Quite a lot of other smartphones around this mid-range price point can go for an extra hour or so on the screen on time, just giving you that extra bit of buffering, because a couple of times before I've been tucked up with Teddy, I've had to give this thing a quick boost just to be able to use it until I do finally end the day. It doesn't support particularly fast charging via cables either, 33 watt wired charging, and of course you have to provide your own adapter because there's not one bundled in the box. But that bit of whinging aside, at least here on the Nothing Phone you do have full support for wireless charging, 15 watt wireless charging, which most rivals do not offer. I think basically one of your only other options at this sort of price point is the iPhone SE 2022, and frankly that smartphone is a rancid turd. So yeah, forget those flashy disco lights. One of the real USPs of the Nothing Phone is the wireless charging, which is very convenient indeed. And the fact that you've got that wireless charging support means that you've also got reverse wireless charging here on the Nothing phone to slap on your earbuds or your smartwatch or anything else that supports wireless charging on the back end of the Nothing phone, and that will suck up some juice from the smartphone and just keep it powered on the go. Unfortunately, I've had some issues doing reverse wireless charging with my own personal wireless earbuds and everything, and I've just double checked, triple checked, make sure that that feature is actually active in the settings, and it is, and still occasionally my stuff just refuses to charge up. So maybe I'm doing something wrong, I'm not sure. I'm going to look into that a bit more and see if I can figure it out, and then I'll hopefully be able to give you guys an update. So let's finish this Nothing phone review with a squint at the camera tech, which is headed up by a 50 meg Sony IMX766 camera sensor, like pretty much every other mid-range phone lately. Unlike much of the competition, you've got built-in optical image stabilization, which is particularly handy for your low-light shots. That Nothing camera UI, not too different from the standard Pixel one, nice and straightforward and streamlined, which is what I like. You can pull down some extra little bonus camera modes and options like so. This allows you to, for instance, quickly swap between the 12 megapixel bin-in mode and the 50 megapixel ultra resolution mode. I'm mostly stuck with the standard 12 megapixel bin-in setting, which still packs plenty of crisp detail into every photo that you shoot. The Nothing phone handles HDR situations really well. It's certainly pretty rare to see any kind of oversaturation, and usually a bright blue sky is accurately captured rather than coming out all washed out. And likewise, my portrait shots came out very nicely indeed as well. I didn't see any bulky results. The bokeh style effect works really well, and thankfully these snaps don't take too long to process either. Like most mid-range mobiles in more ambient light, the Nothing phone does start to struggle a bit. You'll see grain and noise creeping in, although you can use the glyph lights as a less severe form of flash if you need to, and you don't really care about pallid color results, especially when you're snapping a face. Overall, it's pretty impressive stuff, and you can quickly and easily swap to the secondary sensor, which is a 50 megapixel Samsung GN1 sensor, like so. This is your ultra-wide angle shooter, so if you want a more pulled back view of the action, like so. With the ultra-wide shooter, you do get some distortion around the edges of your photos, but the actual picture quality is almost as good as any images taken with the main sensor. Certainly plenty of detail packed in there, and then yeah, it is more prone to saturation in brighter light and not quite as capable in dimmer conditions, but it is still one of the better ultra-wide shooters at this price level. Now, video can be captured at up to 4K resolution, although only at 30 frames per second if you stick it on that Ultra HD setting. And I did find that all of my test footage came out with warmer color temperatures overall, which makes brighter colors look incredibly bold and vivid, almost like it's a living cartoon. Some people may like this effect. I personally prefer more natural visuals, like when I was snapping the photos on this thing. But still, the image stabilization is good enough to work against any shakes and bumps if you're moving and recording simultaneously, and the audio capture ain't bad at all either. You could also use the ultra-wide angle camera to shoot video, but you will have to select this before you start recording, as you can't switch between the two lenses midway through. And this ultra-wide shooter does actually produce more realistic results than the primary lens. And you've got yourself a small selection of other modes, so portrait mode I've already mentioned, and the video mode. You've also got slow-mo video if you fancy a bit of that. And if you dive all the way this way to the more section, a couple more to play around with, including a macro mode, which just uses the ultra-wide angle shooter because it's just a dual lens setup. You've also got an expert mode on there. So that's something you don't find on the standard Pixel phones, and this allows you to mess around with the likes of the ISO level, shutter speed, white balance, etc. And you do have the option of shooting in RAW format as well. And then last up, flip around to the front and you've got yourself a 16 megapixel Sony sensor. Again, it's an IMX471. And again, this is pretty good, even in quite strong light. Once again, capturing natural looking pics, boasting plenty of facial details, wrinkles, lines, blotchy bits, the whole bloody lot. And yeah, in softer lights you will get softer results again, but overall it is proper decent. And if you want to shoot some video using that front-facing camera, you can shoot up to full HD resolution footage, and the audio pickup's pretty decent, even when there's lots of noise going on, as you can hear.
And the sound is very refreshing to dip your toes in.
Yes.
It's just very cold water for hot.
Yeah.
That freezes on your toes.
Yeah, some highly relevant information there. Thanks for that. And that right there, in a nutshell, is the Nothing Phone 1 from Colpay and Crew. And I've got to say, for first generation hardware and software, it is a pretty solid, sturdy all-round package. Forget about the funky disco light, glyph lighting on the back end, but get past all that bollocks, and what you've got here is a highly competitive mid-range smartphone that does have a couple of USPs tucked in there that most rivals lack, such as that wireless charging support. It can be a little bit rough around the edges at times, the software definitely needs some refinement, and it's a shame the battery life isn't quite as good. But you know what, the media chops are spot on, the camera is pretty freaking good at this price point. And I can see most people being happy using it as their everyday blower, even if they just completely ignore that glyph shenanigans. But of course, the Nothing phone does have very stiff competition at this price point, the likes of the OnePlus Nord 2T, the Samsung Galaxy A53, the Pixel 6a, etc. I am going to be doing a bit of a side-by-side comparison with this phone and a couple of its biggest rivals, so stay tuned for that. And of course, I've got my best £400 mid-range mobiles video live right now if you want to see what some of those big old rivals are all about. But what I want to hear is, are you tempted by the Nothing phone? What do you reckon? Are you more or less swayed now that you've seen this video? It'd be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Please do plug subscribe and ding that notifications bell for more on the latest and greatest tech, and have yourselves a ruddy, fantastic rest of the week. Cheers everyone. Love you.